Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is June 5th, 9 p.m. here in Hong Kong. And this is another video where I select one of your questions and devote the entire video, hopefully not too long, but devote the entire video to that question because I anticipate that my answer is going to be extensive, enough for the length of a video. This question was submitted by Peyman Sayyad, and it is simply, why is it that people call psychology a soft science? So if you're interested in this topic, feel free to stay with me. You might have your own answers to this question. I would be interested in hearing your answers too. But here are my thoughts to this question, psychology as a soft science. I think it's a good question. It is a worthwhile question to think about. And I think it is a question that is in the popular consciousness too. People, ordinary people, non-academics, non-specialists wonder about it or have views on it. To begin the discussion, I'm going to introduce a useful tool. It's quite simple, but it's a very useful conceptual theoretical tool. It comes from structuralism. Structuralism is a movement that began in linguistics in the early 20th century, and then it spread into the social sciences, the humanities, in psychoanalysis and philosophy. And the originator of this movement, the official person who started this movement was the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. And the only bit that I want to take from that and apply to our discussion is that according to structuralism, according to Saussure, the insight that he offered is that the meaning of a term, a meaning of a word, or as he called it, the value of a term or a sign is determined not based on it alone in isolation, but is determined based on its difference from other terms, other signs in a system of signs. So for example, think about the traffic light. Just think about the two colors of the traffic light, red and green, stop and go. So stop and go, they could be understood, but a complete understanding of these two signs, complete understanding of these two kinds of traffic lights is understood only when we understand both of them together, both go and stop at the same time. And then based on that structure, based on a system, that little system of signs, the system of traffic lights, it is then that we can understand each individual sign, the meaning of each individual sign alone, because stop means don't go and go means don't stop. You don't have to stop. So the meaning of each sign, the value of each sign is determined based on its contrast, based on its difference from the other members in that system. So we can apply this to talk about science when people talk about science or the discourse about science. Every act of communication, every judgment of a piece of science, scientific work. Every judgment happens within a system of signs that those signs are meaningful, they have value within a system and in contrast with each other, in distinction with each other, contradistinction with each other. So hard science is defined in contrast to soft science. Hard science is valuable when somebody uses the phrase hard science as a compliment, as a positive description, a good description of an approach, a scientific project. It is being tacitly, implicitly contrasted with soft sciences. So hard sciences are good because they are not soft, and soft sciences are presumably bad because they are not hard. So what is hard science? I have to mention that it's based on a very phallic metaphor, the hard and soft being mapped onto good and bad. So what do people mean usually by hard science? What they mean is precise. Hard sciences are precise, they're powerful, and they can produce statements about which we can be confident. So they produce results, statements, predictions that we can be confident about. And once something from a hard science is applied in another domain, that application is visible, it's clear to understand, it's easy to understand, and it has visible consequences. We can develop new vacuum cleaners, for example, or new kinds of refrigerators based on a new finding. By contrast, what is a soft science? A soft science is it lacks all those good features that hard sciences provide. Soft sciences are imprecise, they are weak, and the statements that they provide lack confidence. We cannot be confident about conclusions of a psychological scientific research. Even if you're told, for example, by psychologists, there's such a thing as cognitive dissonance, we still cannot predict what happens in a situation, in a setup that can potentially produce cognitive dissonance. We cannot predict what happens in the behavior of a particular individual. We can make predictions, overall predictions, weak predictions, imprecise predictions about what might happen in a large sample of people, like something might happen to 55% of them or 60% of them. So the application, the consequence, what we can do with them, with the psychological finding is not clear. And we cannot be confident about whether we can apply a piece of psychological finding into a new field, into a new context. Let's continue. Another question that we can ask, one of the possible questions, a good question, I think, we can ask is, what is it that makes a science a hard science? Is it its method? Because if it is just its method, then any science, sociology, psychology, any science, literary theory, can be a hard science if it's just about the method. But an alternative and a possibility is that it's not just about the method, it's also about the subject matter, the domain that the science is interested in, what the science wants to pay attention to, what the science is trying to understand. So the subject matter is important in whether or not something can be a hard science, or whether it has to accept its fate as a soft science. So subject matter could be a physical system, a closed system, a system that can be isolated from the rest of the world, a system that can be controlled, a system that can be designed by the scientists in a context like a laboratory. So the scientists can construct their own environment with the aim of isolating a behavior, a process, a building block, and removing extraneous elements, irrelevant elements, elements that they have decided. The assumption is that whatever that we are keeping out of this experimental setting, it is irrelevant, and excluding it is not going to change the nature of what we are studying. But in psychology, changing the situation, removing aspects of the situation is going to change what we are studying. So psychological facts, in other words, are not separable from their contexts. Let's just take one example, one kind of behavior. Let's think about the behavior of dancing. Dancing cannot be isolated from where you're dancing, why you're dancing, with whom you're dancing, whether or not you're dancing under the influence of alcohol, whether or not you're dancing to impress someone as part of your participation in a competition, in a contest. Somebody might come and say, no, I'm not interested in the context. I'm just interested in the movements. I'm interested in the skeletal-muscular structures. That's not psychology. That could be kinesiology. That could be the mechanics, the physics of performance, but it's not psychology, because psychology, a psychological fact, a psychological process, is so intimately connected to its context, to the reasons why it is happening. And the reason comes from the context. Meaning comes from the context. A psychological process is deeply, it's defined based on its context. So by isolating it, by removing it from the context, we are changing it. We are studying something else. So I already mentioned structuralism and de Saussure. There is another helpful reference, another helpful idea that I need to borrow. This one is from an older source, much older source, and that is Aristotle. So Aristotle, one of his very important insights is that when we are pursuing a scientific project and we demand a certain level of precision, the precision that we demand should correspond to what we are studying. So what Aristotle said, it's an extremely important insight. Precision should be demanded to the extent that the subject matter allows for it. If the subject matter allows for precision, then we can pursue precision and still be loyal to what we are studying. If we demand precision where the subject matter doesn't allow for precision, we are being disloyal to what we are studying. We actually are distorting what we are studying. We deviate from it and end up studying something else. Why? Because we are pursuing precision and hard science. So it would be unrigorous let me start the sentence one more time. It would be unrigorous to demand precision where in a domain that doesn't allow for precision. And these domains, Aristotle pointed out, include ethics, politics, psychology. So other than the distinction between hard science and soft science, we can think of better distinctions like rigorous and unrigorous. So psychology and physics could both be rigorous. And psychology is rigorous when it doesn't demand the same kind of precision, the same kind of hardness that physics has. So both can be rigorous. It would be unrigorous for psychology to try to imitate physics. So rigorous, unrigorous is one distinction. Careful, uncareful is another distinction. And why not? Even caring and uncaring. We can have a science project that cares about the people that it's studying if it is dealing with people. The softness that we talk about is the softness of a method that is being applied in order to not kill the thing that is being studied. So think about somebody is interested in studying birds, behavior of birds, and want to have a lot of control over birds while he's studying them. So he always insists that the birds should be in the cage, should stay in the cage. But are we really studying the full extent of what it means to be a bird if we only study them in a cage? So with a similar logic, we can realize that laboratory studies of human beings in a laboratory setting where somebody comes in, doesn't care about what they are doing, doesn't care about the experimenter, is under some kind of obligation to fulfill a course credit. Is that representative of what it means to be human, how to act as a human? So as you might guess, I have a lot of opinions about this. I've written a book about this topic. My book is about this topic, and it's among other things, it is an outcome of my own disillusionment with the desire of psychology to be a hard science. And to put the main line of arguments of the book, I would say, by trying to be a hard science, precise, have power and control over human beings, what it sacrifices, experimental psychology, what it sacrifices is human agency and a faithful image of the human agency that could otherwise be obtained if we adopt better, more faithful methods of study. All right, that's all. I hope it wasn't too long. Let me know what you think, and we will continue the Q&A step by step in future videos. Thank you.